Penn State 44, Maryland 7. That's Sean Fitz, Nate Bauer. I'm Greg Pickle from Blue White Illustrated at a freezing Beaver Stadium where Penn State, Sean, is going to the Big Ten title game after beating Maryland 44-7 following an upset of Michigan over Ohio State earlier today.
How about that? Chaos in college football. It's hard to win in college football. Ohio State found that out today. Michigan, fourth straight time they've beat them? And all of a sudden, Penn State's in Indy. That's not one of the scenarios we had cooked up. We were kind of expecting the home playoff game in December, and now all of a sudden you're going to Indianapolis to play Oregon. I guess it is Oregon. Surprises, but Penn State 11-1 on the season, handled their business the way that they had to handle their business, and as you see in college football every week, it doesn't happen like that. So didn't start the way that they wanted it to. Nick Singleton fumbles on the first play. Maryland scores on their first play. All of a sudden, what the heck's going on? Penn State buckles down, clearly better than Maryland, especially a defensive effort today outside of that first play that was pretty incredible. Penn State got to whoever Maryland threw back there at quarterback. Yep. Kind of with ease. I mean, it was pretty remarkable to see guys like Abdul Carter, Denai Dennis Sutton making the plays that they did. All of a sudden, the offense comes along, scores 28 points in the second quarter, and all of a sudden, you're heading to Indy.
Right. It's hard to believe, but it's true. Penn State. It wasn't that hard for you to believe, though, because you wrote this week that it was it was more of a possibility. I believe the way you phrased it was more of a possibility than what people were giving it credit for.
That's a great reminiscence by you. Thank you for the recall. Look, these things happen, right? And the amount of presumption that happens in college football, right? I talked about it 3 weeks ago when the first college football playoff rankings came out. It was like, hey, Kirby Smart complaining, all of the things that were happening of people, having issues with where they were seated and ranked and all. Like, it's like, hey, just relax. Like, these things are going to play themselves out, and surprise, surprise, but not. I mean, Michigan's got something on Ohio State at this point. And Penn State finds itself in the Big Ten championship game. I don't know that this is how Penn State would have drawn it up. I think certainly they would have loved to have beaten Ohio State to get there in the first place. But, hey, either way, you get an opportunity now to, well, first of all, the floor, I think, is a 6 seed. At worst, Penn State's going to be at home for a 6 seed. If they lose to Oregon, they will not be seeded lower than Ohio State. That is significant for a number of reasons. But also, if Penn State wins, and Oregon has shown its susceptibility through the course of the season, if Penn State wins, all of a sudden they're not playing until New Year's Day, right? And so that dramatically changes the context, and it's going to be an interesting week for Penn State. It's going to be an interesting, sequence of events to find out where this team is headed next. But of all the possibilities before the start of the season, I'm not sure that many people would have had Penn State in the Big Ten championship game and with an opportunity to be seated in that top four going into the college football playoff.
Yeah, certainly not being there with a loss to Ohio State. Sean, Jalen Reed said after the game, he was asked about if there are pros and cons to this trip for Penn State. And he said, that essentially they were looking forward to this week off. It was a time to get healthy, rest up. They don't have that now. And if they don't get the bye, they won't have that as some other teams will. So interesting way of looking at something that used to be seen as one of the better accomplishments you could have in a given year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what Lane Kiffin said it 2 weeks ago. I mean, you can definitely make arguments against it. I mean, you're never going to turn down playing for a conference title because those things. I mean, it still matters. Right. And then of course, what can come on top of that with the bye and everything. I think it's adorable, Nate, that you think the committee won't rank Penn State behind Ohio State if they lose. Because
I'm sure.
Okay.
They cannot do that because of how it disincentivizes making the conference championship game. Like, for the good of college football, they cannot allow a two-loss regular season Ohio State team to be seated above Penn State. Listen, it's fine. I understand, and we'll see what happens, but I don't think for the integrity of the game they can allow that to happen.
Retort.
It's cute, yes. I think that'll be very fun to watch it play out if it does play out that way. But first, Penn State's got to actually play Oregon. And Oregon has been susceptible, as you said, Greg. No team is just impervious to anything in college football, and we saw that. We might see it tonight. Texas at A&M is a very big game, and it's getting cold. My mouth is freezing, so I apologize for that. But yeah, it's another opportunity to go out there and play. It's another opportunity to work on some things. They will miss that time off to get healthy. Venga Ioane got hurt earlier today. He came back in the game, but those bumps and bruises are just going to add up. Of course, you're without Anthony Donka for a long time. Of course, KJ Winston's been out the entire season. Those things have stacked up. Alonzo Ford, the defensive tackle. So Penn State not in an ideal spot in health, but I mean, you're 11-1 going to the Big Ten title game. You can't argue with any of that stuff. So it's pretty remarkable to see that. However it plays out, I think pretty great regular season for Penn State.
Yeah, Penn State an early 3.5-point underdog at the various sports books against Oregon. Final thoughts? I'm cold, so whatever you have, just let's get through it.
Yeah, real quick. You get to play the number 1 team in the country.
Right.
Like that. Bottom line is Penn State gets to have that opportunity again, which is a thing that has happened a ton. And I know that this conversation is going to happen this week about James Franklin and records against top 5 teams. Here you go again, right? You get another opportunity, and the more opportunities you have, maybe something happens.
Sean, final thoughts?
Yes, Tyler Warren is an animal. He was fantastic today. I believe broke the Penn State record for tight ends. He's got a lot of records.
Tight end touchdowns and Big Ten single-season tight end receptions.
That's pretty remarkable. Nick Singleton showed some pop today. He's back. I don't want to get away without saying the touchdown at the end definitely ruffled some feathers.
Oh, yeah.
Mike Loxley called it, I believe, bullshit.
Yeah.
That's a quote.
I think we're allowed to say that.
Okay.
That we did.
James Franklin said, "Hey, you stud your ones in. We're going to come after you." So I see points on both sides.
And if you don't want to get passing touchdown scored on, you play cover 2, not cover 0.
Not cover 0. I mean, he's making his football points. Loxley's making his sportsmanship points, which football points are going to win in this one. So that's an interesting thing to come out of this game. It's interesting to watch the last couple of weeks, and I know you're the perspective guy, Nate, but Penn State ends the Minnesota game on its own terms. They end this game kind of stuffing Maryland's face into the turf. Right. So, I mean, is there a difference in attitude? Is there a difference in how that can help you in the Big Ten title game? I don't know, but it's certainly notable, and it's not just kind of sitting back and waiting for letting it happen.
Yeah, no doubt. You have anything you need to add to that?
That's it. There's juice there, right? Yeah.
Plenty to come throughout the week. Stay tuned. Penn State heads to Indianapolis. We'll have complete coverage at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, where it's $1 for 7 days of access. Check us out. BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. For Sean Fitz, Nate Bauer, I'm Greg Pickle. We'll talk to you later this week as Penn State gets ready for the Big Ten championship game. Yeah, man. I was trying to talk there at the end and almost